Shalom. Today's class, Mir Hashem, is Parshat Chukat. Today's class is L'Nishras Rachel Bas Chaim Tzvi Alel Shalom. We thank Libby Bamser from the studio and all the other people involved in Aleh, particularly Mrs. Tzipi Klaver. She should be blessed for all the work that she does. Okay, Parshat Chukat, the great mystery, the mystery of the contradiction, of the incomprehensible mitzvot, the Chukah. So we begin with our synopsis. This is based on the Sefer Lilmod of Lamed, and we have a special purification ceremony performed to those who had touched or had been under the same roof of a dead body. As part of the rites of purification, a para aduma, translated as a red heifer, a red cow, which was without any blemish, which had not been worked and was slaughtered outside the camp and burned together with the cedar wood, hyssop, and a scarlet thread. So the ashes of this red heifer are gathered, mixed with water from a running stream, and sprinkled upon the unclean person on the third and seventh day of his impurity. At the end of the seventh day, after he had washed his clothes and immersed himself in a mikveh, he would once be able to be considered pure and partake of the sanctuary worship. For 38 years, the Bnei Yisrael roamed through the wilderness, during which all of their older generation, between the age of 20 and 60, had died, except for, as we've learned, Yehoshua and Kalev. At the beginning of the 40th year from the Exodus from Egypt, the remainder of the populace returned to Kadesh, and it was there that Miriam, the sister of Moshe and Aaron, died. At her passing, the well of water which had miraculously accompanied the Israelites ceased to flow. I mean, you could always ask the question, how in the world could they have water in the desert? In the wilderness there's no water. And the merit of Miriam, there's a well which traveled with the Jewish people, and that was their portable water supply. It's like having bottles of water wherever they went. Once again, the people began to murmur against Moshe for the lack of water. God tells Moshe and Aaron to speak to a specific rock, and enough water would flow forth from it to satisfy the people. However, Moshe was so angered by the people's constant disrespect that he impatiently struck the rock instead of speaking to it. Because they had not followed God's instructions and therefore dishonored him before the people, Moshe and Aaron were told that they would not be allowed to enter the land of Israel. That was their great dream. To be able to privilege, after all this, to go to land, the promised land. And because they had sinned by hitting the rock instead of just speaking to the rock, they had done a smaller miracle, a smaller Kiddush Hashem of God's greatness than what could have been. They were denied that privilege of entering the land of Israel. And now the people are told to prepare for their final stage of their long journey. The only route to the promised land that was available was to take them through the land of Edom, south of the Dead Sea. So Moshe sends messengers to the king of Edom requesting permission to lead the people through the territory and offering to pay for any water that the people might drink along the way. And not only did the king refuse, he also barred the Bnei Yisrael from posing an armed force. So therefore, before they even knew it, Bnei Yisrael were therefore compelled to take the roundabout route to the southern borders of Edom. When they reached the peak in the southern range of Hor Hahar, that is where Aaron died, and he was buried there. At that point, as we'll see, Moshe installed his son Elazar as the next Kohen Gadol. After successfully repulsing the attack by the king of Arad, who was a Canaanite, the weary Israelites complained bitterly about their lack of food and water. Consequently, they were punished with a plague caused by the deadly bite of fiery serpents. The people admitted their error, and so what Moshe Rabbeinu did was he had a serpent of brass which was lifted upon a pole. Whoever looked at this brass or copper serpent was healed. The journey which had taken the congregation south, east, and then north, past the lands of Edom and Moab, and it came to a halt when it reached the river of Arnon, which is in the boundary between Moab in the south and Emor in the north. Then we have Sichon, who is the king of the Amorites. He also refuses the Bnei Yisrael to pass through his land, and he leads up his army against them. God is clearly on the side of Bnei Yisrael. There's a very sound, resounding defeat for the Amorites. They turn northward towards the fertile land of Gilad and Bashan, and Bnei Yisrael are able to overcome the resistance of Og, the king of Bashan, and take possession of his country. The land to the east of the Jordan has now been conquered by Bnei Yisrael, and now they're on the border of Moab, facing Yericho. Okay, as I told you last week, we're going to begin by looking at the kind of ridicule, how Korach got people to be united against Moshe Rabbeinu. It's the power of the people kind of argument, and he says the following. He says to Moshe Rabbeinu, tell me, does a talus which is entirely blue require tzitzit, or is exempt from tzitzit? Does a house full of Torah scrolls require mezuzah, or is a mezuzah unnecessary? The reason I'm talking about this, as Rabbi Ephraim Buchwald points out, is where the Torah is always concerned about. Now, we know already that the Torah is not written exactly precisely in chronological order. But even if the chronological order is not followed, there's a rhyme and a reason as far as the juxtaposition. Why is one thing connected to another thing? We learned